now let's bring in our incredible opening keynote. I'm so thrilled to have them with us. First of all, I'd like to introduce Genevieve Padalecki. While many of you know Jen for her TV appearances as Ruby in the CW hit Supernatural and Emily in the brand new series Walker, Jen has also built a massive audience with her incredibly popular lifestyle blog, Now and Jen. Reaching over 1 million Instagram followers in its first week of launch, Now and Jen covers a mix of personal tips and advice, healthy recipes, product recommendations, and other topics that stretch from homesteading to adventure travel. A recent trip to the Great Bear Rainforest inspired her latest venture, Town, an online resource and community dedicated to reducing burnout for people and planet. In August 2020, Jen launched Sonoma by Now and Jen in partnership with Kohl's, offering beautiful and classic fashions for women of all sizes at an affordable price, with proceeds from select fashions benefiting Green for All, a nonprofit dedicated to addressing climate change through the creation of green jobs that lift marginalized communities out of poverty while providing more sustainable solutions for the future. And before we do our virtual round of applause, I also want to bring in Natasha Nichols, who's going to be interviewing Jen. Natasha is executive director of We Sow, We Grow, a community-based gardening initiative that focuses on growing, educating, and planting confident home growers. She's the founder of Houseful of Nichols, an award-winning blog that chronicles her journeys with her husband and 4 children. Her love for travel came from being born into a traveling family, including a grandfather who traversed the U.S. on his motorcycle, the real reason she gets behind the wheel so often. Natasha's Wonderful's head of social media and the face of many of our digital channels, from our dynamic Facebook group, Wonderful Women Who Travel, to our Twitter presence. And she was recognized at Mom 2.0 for Blog of the Year, as well as Philanthropic Work of the Year, and has worked with many dynamic brands such as Kia, KOA, and 4-H. As you can see, we have 2 rock star women, and I'm so pleased to have you both here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Oh, Natasha, I think you're muted.
Natasha's like, I'm going to see how well we know each other, Jen, because you're just going to read my lips.
Didn't know to unmute herself before. Isn't that awesome?
It happens to the best of us. Well, welcome to the stage. I'm so grateful to have both of you here. Jen, thanks so much for taking the time to come join us today.
Thank you.
And I'm going to leave you both to it.
All right.
Awesome.
So, for a little bit of background, hey, Jen is my friend. We are friends. This is my friend. And I'm so excited that I have the opportunity to actually interview her in this space because, number one, we love to talk, right? And we do. And we can go on and on about the things that we love about our various passions. And we know, Jen, that you are very passionate about sustainability. And about making sure that we as women take time for ourselves to kind of just exhale, right? So we're going to jump right into Town, which you launched this year, and we're going to explain to everyone what sparked that and what you look to accomplish with what you share.
Yeah, totally. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I love Natasha. I love you. I love being around you. You're infectious. I will do anything that you ask. And I will always look for an excuse to have more conversations with you. So thank you so much for letting me be here. But yeah, Town, Town came about a couple of years ago. And well, first of all, it came about because my life, I grew up outside. The outdoors are really important to me and important to my family. So much so that I grew up in the Bay Area, and my dad, our vacations always revolved around being outside, hiking, fishing. If we fished, we, even as young as 5 years old, had to, gut and clean and eat the entire fish. Like, it was a very respectful process. And when I was 13 years old, my family wanted a more rustic sort of lifestyle and told us we were going on vacation, and up and moved to Montana. And speaking of travel, and then from there ended up in Idaho. But we've always branched out and every vacation, every experience usually revolves around being outside in the outdoors. So I've sort of feel like I've grown up coping with Mother Nature as sort of my therapist, so to speak. And so after having children, I really wanted to instill that in them. And I didn't think it would be so difficult, but I thought it would come naturally, and it does, but it's like I wanted to hammer it in their heads. And so my husband was filming a TV show called Supernatural, and that films up in Vancouver, Canada. And so we would often go up and stay with him for a period of time. And one of the places that's always been on my bucket list is Nemo Bay, which I'm sure we'll get into travel and choosing sustainable places. But Nemo Bay is one of those really special places that is a more sustainable functioning resort. And we were going specifically to observe grizzly bears and nature, take some hikes, see some glaciers, maybe even do some fishing. And when we got up there, we were told that I think there are 5 fishing runs up there that the grizzly bears feed off of and survive off of. And I believe it was 3, I might be misspeaking. It's at least 2 of those fishing runs have now gone extinct because of overfishing, not because of the resort and they, bring foreigners like myself to go fishing, but because commercial fishing and just large scale fishing that now those have gone extinct, and it has forced the bears into retreating. And I don't know if you remember that viral photo that went around not too long ago, a couple of years ago, where the bear was emaciated, but that came from close to that region. And so from that sort of sparked this real need to figure out a way to bring the importance of nature to others, to, like we live in Austin, Texas, and that's a very urban environment. And so I wanted to figure out how to bring that impact of what I experienced in Nemo Bay to New York, to Detroit, to people, who may not be able to see this kind of thing, and reflect on that and use that. And so Town started out as this grand idea, and it still is, but we wanted to compact it into making having actionable resources and providing advice, providing tips in which people can make actionable contributions to the environment that are sustainable, that without the pressures of perfectionism. Because that was another thing as I was discovering being more sustainable, is that there was so much conflicting information and it was so heavy. And the subject is heavy. It's a tough thing to tackle. I mean, man, when you hear that we're all going to die and the earth is crumbling and, volcanoes are going off, the temperatures are rising, and there's not much we can do about it in the next 100 years, you feel like, what's the point? So I wanted to make sure that we were uplifting and figuring out ways to be humorous, because we have to accept where we are. But what are those small steps that we can take to empower ourselves, to also put on our oxygen mask? Because I really feel, for me, what nature does is it really allows me to relax. I deal with depression and anxiety myself, and I really sort of pound it out in nature and find my groundedness and rootedness. And so I wanted to figure out ways in which we put on our own oxygen mask, sustainable mask, and nurture ourselves, and at the same time making a cyclical sort of path with giving back to nature and our communities. So it's all intertwined. So that was a long-winded.
It's a pretty deep, when you think about sustainability and making sure that you hit on all points, it is a lot to digest. And I think the mistake that so many of us make is trying to consume it all at one time, instead of biting off in very, very actionable, our action items and everything. So my next question to you is, those people who feel that sustainability isn't connected to travel, how do you go about navigating that conversation?
Well, first of all, I think everything is connected to sustainability. There's just an article, and I just started reading it, about our food weight, food and to clothing, to everything is connected to sustainability. And so when we talk about travel, travel is one of those tricky ones. It was funny. I was just chatting with this incredible journalist, Eliza Colbert, who wrote The Sixth Extinction and Under a White Sky. And, for her job, and I'm sure many people who are listening and watching, a lot of people rely on travel to, one, feed themselves, because travel is just one of those wonderful things in which we can see and discover and be curious and feed our souls. But especially if you rely on that, a lot of us now, we're so mobile And we're so used to, having a meeting on this coast or that coast, or if you're a journalist, you have to be there to see it and feel it and understand. And she was saying how difficult it was because she hasn't been able to travel this last year and see things. So, we have to travel, and with traveling comes a lot of offsets, a lot of pollution, planes, trains, and automobiles. They all have their own degrees of carbon emissions and pollution, and that's inevitable. And we have to look at the offset of that. So, sustainability and travel go hand in hand. Now, that doesn't have to be negative. So when we travel, knowing these things, we can also kind of counterbalance that with maybe picking hotels that have, are carbon neutral, or support local communities or maybe that are closer, or picking ways to get to your destination that maybe aren't as harmful for the environment, or when you get there, making sure that you are supporting the local community. So there are ways to be more sustainable within travel, and it's just being smart about how to figure that out, which I'm still figuring out myself.
So never one to beat around the bush. We all know that we live in a capitalistic world, and sustainability has become one of those buzzwords where people can get more money for certain things. For people who are looking to become more sustainable but can't afford the trendy sustainable things, what are the little things that they can do? Like, I'm sitting here right now with my glass water bottle, which took me a long time to get used to, but I also just use water bottles in general, or canteens when I travel. What are those little things that those little steps that they can take in order to, make life a little bit nicer for the people that are going to come after them?
You mean like while you travel?
Yes, while you travel, at home too, because none of us have really been doing anything the last year. The last year and a half at home too, but the things that I guess become routine at home will become you'll take with you when you travel. So
yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's applicable to all walks of life, and sustainability is really hard, and that was it can be very elitist and very expensive, which is one of the reasons why I really wanted to be mindful in creating town. And because I love green for all's messaging, which is we should be green for all, not just for some. And that's how sustainability really should be. And so, when it comes to sustainability, unfortunately, oftentimes it is really expensive because it takes a little bit longer to make, because the process is longer. It's not a sped up process. And so you're investing more, and that's not always really feasible for a lot of people. So there are different ways that you can be better. One, or more sustainable without breaking the bank. One thing that I actually have been doing lately is I've been either doing Rent the Runway, or I've been selling my clothes on RealReal and buying from RealReal, which is also really great. The clothing itself may not be sustainable, but at least the clothing is already out there, and it's, you're not
being recycled in a way.
Yeah, which I think is awesome. There are great garments out there that are rad, and why go buy the newest thing when you can buy a great piece or vintage piece or whatever. Glass water bottles are great, although I did break mine last night in the dishwasher, so I have my
This is becoming a running thing with us too, where there are accidents that happen whenever we're slated to talk to each other. Bees, broken glass, things like that. I know that when I am on the road or when we're traveling, we try to stay in places that are, or eat or consume, whether that's souvenirs or whatever, from places that are local, because we like to keep our dollar within that community, and they're not paying out. So that's another good way. And then eating locally and trusting the locals to tell you where to go, because they know best where those dollars need to be. And it's not that I want to cripple the big businesses, but we know that the heart of most places are the folks who actually live there and grow up there and put their blood, sweat, and tears within the community.
100%.
I know a lot of people who are joining us today are huge fans of yours because of your background with acting, and not that they don't see you as a sustainability activist or whatever, but you are known as Ruby or Wildfire, which I didn't have the pleasure of watching at all when it first came out, and then of course Walker. So do you want to tell us about? And I love how you say it. And my husband, who is working on a show called Supernatural, as a,
well, some people
that little show that lasted for 15 seasons. That I was on.
It's always that fine line of like, I mean, I never think he's that famous, and then suddenly we'll be out and people freak, and I go, "Oh yeah, I forgot."
it can't be because he's like 7 feet tall, Jen. I mean,
I mean, there's that.
Jared's he's a pretty tall drink of water there. Or maybe it's just because we're 5'3", and anybody above 6 feet.
He's longer too, and he just like.
Anybody above 6 feet is massive to us.
I told him my grandfather was tall when I first met him. I'm sorry, I'm segueing, but I was like, my grandfather's really tall, and he met my grandfather, and he's like, he's 5'9".
Those 6-footers always have something to say about those of us who have 5 in our height. So what are the projects that you are currently working on that you want to share with us?
Well, I mean, I got back into acting, which is really exciting. I'm not too ashamed to admit nepotism. My husband hiring me to play his wife. I'm back. I stepped back in the role of Jared's wife. I know
you break when you go across the threshold. Yeah, you just cut. It's a cut.
So, which is super, super fun, and I've lived to go to set. I love it. I'm really excited about it, and it brings me such joy, and I get really sad when I'm not in an episode. It really bums me out because I love working so much, and I love the cast and the crew and everything about it. So that's been really exciting, and I'm so appreciative of everyone out there who's been watching and supporting the show, because I know it hasn't been really consistent with COVID. We've had to shut down a few times with cases and all the chaos. So, I know it's not consistent. So I really appreciate everyone tuning in. And then the next big thing for me is really town. I've been really just throwing myself into that. And we've been shooting a lot of content for town. And, I am not an expert at any way, shape, or form about sustainability, but I care so deeply about it. And so this has been so fun to really talk to people, and I really want to understand how to be more sustainable, not just talk to experts, because that can be really helpful, but I want to know how people live. How did someone like me, like you, take off and decide to build build a farm in the middle of Chicago? I talked to this, I feel like I've introduced you to Chaz from Sweetwater Farm.
Yes. Yeah.
But we just went and chatted with him too, and just to create such a solution of, this little farm in the middle of literally a parking lot, and bring food to their community. Or Rome Ranch, who's doing regenerative farming and who built Epic Bar, and now is like, hey, we're building a community of clean, great soil. And I just want to know how we can take these things, and I'm so inspired by it, and how we can bring them into our own lives and do something impactful in our own homes, and make it actionable. So we're not just like, oh, well, this climate expert says that if the ocean keeps rising, then we're all screwed. So that's great, but what do we do with that? So
right, you kind of get the glazed over look from people, and I don't think a lot of folks know that doing things like this, those little steps are forms of activism as well, because you are actively changing the way that the world is by bettering aspects of yourself and the things that your children do or your family members do. Now, we do have a comment from someone who says that they're always sure to bring reusable travel cutlery, a cloth napkin, and a reusable straw. It's a very small thing, right, in the large scope of things, but it's one less straw, one less piece of cutlery that has to be washed in a dishwasher. We're not using as much water, and if those steps put together,
or your
definitely
own boxes as well.
They
Which
they definitely make a difference.
yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, you know, you look like a trash or a bag lady with all this stuff, but I mean, you know, I do it too. But it's important and it's good, and you just get in a rhythm and a habit of it.
And I mean, not to be, I guess, shallow, but they're making things a lot prettier
Yeah,
now, with things. So when you do bring your takeout boxes or your burlap bags now, they're cuter, and they're not. It doesn't look so. I'm really really trying to look like I don't care about anything except for saving the earth.
yeah.
I can still be fashionable and still have my foot forward in the way that I look. And there's nothing wrong if you like the burlap bags. I'm not throwing off
No,
or
but it's
throwing
nice
shade.
to feel like you can express
Yes,
your
yes,
individuality
and still be helpful towards the earth. Now
yeah,
we do want to open. I know we were only given 45 minutes, which is bogus because we can talk for much longer
I know.
than 45 minutes. But we do want to leave room for those of you who may have questions for Jen, questions for sustainability, things in general, and even for me. Yeah, I run a farm in Chicago.
Oh, Natasha is
It's
what
it's
we really
pretty
want
pretty
to ask
awesome.
questions about. Natasha is like, I ask her all the time. I'm always like, "What's this? What's that?" And or like, "Hey, I need a joke. Like, cheer me up. I need a smile."
And we talk chickens quite a bit. We talk chickens. I know when you got the frost, the cold freeze in Texas,
Natasha's like,
uh,
"You're fine."
the chickens will be fine. They know birds are fine. They know what to do. And I'm surprised that you all can't hear our chickens singing the egg song right now as they're laying outside, which is yeah, it's a little bit annoying first thing in the morning when all you want to do is sleep. Um, so let's do travel based things and move from sustainability until we get some questions. What has been your favorite trip that you've taken? So I have three: solo, with your children, and then with Jared alone.
Oh, that's a great one. I need to take more solo trips, to be honest with you, and that's something that's definitely on my list. It's been really challenging because everybody right now is traveling somehow. Like I've tried to book all these yurts recently because I'm like, I just need solo, but it seems like everyone has the same idea. But my favorite solo trip was actually when I was in high school because it was the first time I was open, or I even knew that you could do something like that. And I went to a really like kind of progressive school in Idaho, and part of the curriculum was that the outdoors were part of the curriculum. And so we had to go on all these big hiking and camping trips throughout the year. And one of those trips is in Arches National Park. And so we had to read Desert Solitaire by Edward Abbey, and you had to camp by yourself for a couple of days. And that was like terrifying to me because
I've seen too many horror movies to do that.
totally, like I don't know what's gonna happen. Like my school is just making me fend for myself, and like some people are fasting, and I'm like, what does that even look like? And peeing and pooping outside, and oh my gosh, can someone see me? But I feel like that adventure for me was something that I'll never forget. I was about 16 years old, and I didn't travel far. I had like a mile radius basically that you could kind of use as your own. But that for me just made me feel like, oh, I can do this. And then I can take it a little farther and a little farther. So that for me was like so cool. And plus I still have my journal entries from it. The ghost outline of the arches at night is the sun setting, and you're alone and you're like, wow, this earth is so cool and so neat. So that was really special, and I hope to do more of those. The next trip, I would say, I mean, honestly, anywhere I go with my husband, this is really silly, but anywhere we go is kind of an adventure, and we
Oh,
aren't big planners, which is so lame. And I wish we were better planners. I
that's
think
not lame at all. Those are the best adventures.
they true, but I think we're hard to be friends with sometimes. Like, yeah. Jared has the weekend off and we're out of town. So I think people are like, what's wrong with you? But a lot of the time he would have all these conventions during the summertime, during the hiatus with Supernatural. And we would kind of like just look at a map and go, okay, where are we going to go? And we'd get on a train and we would just end up at a destination, and we'd use the train as like our hotel, which is also another way to kind of save money and be more green. And I'll tell this really funny story, and I hope I'm not taking all your time, but we were on one train, and we just bought a compartment, and you get in the compartment and there are these bunk beds. And so it's like 2, 2, and 2. So you have like six people can theoretically sleep. And my husband can barely fit. He's like, goodness, right? So he gets in there and like we throws our stuff in, and there's a sweet older couple. And I don't even know if they knew each other, but they're probably in their like 70s or 80s, and they're stuck with us, and we're still in our 20s, like, nah. We throw our stuff in, we go have a couple of drinks, and then the staff let us know that, hey, there isn't a compartment if you want it that no one's using if you want to sleep in there. And we're like, okay, great. So we stumble into the room a little drunk, and Jared grabs my bag, and it's so heavy, and drops it to the floor. And the poor little old man like sits up super fast and like hits his head and probably has a heart attack with this like 6'5" guy like looming over him. But you know, those adventures for us, like just winging it, are some of the best, you know, ones, because you're not like, check, I did this, check, I did this, check, I did this.
Right.
It's more of like the spirit of adventure. So that's always like super fun. And and asking locals, like, where would you go? Where do you think? And what's good?
It's good that you still like your spouse too, because I know a lot of people who can't travel with their spouses at all. Like they honestly can't travel one-on-one. And I feel that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, but I think you have to be realistic about who you are. So when we first started traveling, you know, I was okay not seeing everything. And I wanted to, you know, I wanted to soak in and just in the morning and have my cup of coffee, or, you know, one of us wanted to work out and the other one did it, whatever it was. And so we were on different schedules at times. And I think the important thing is to note that, like, you don't have to see everything at the exact same time on the exact same schedule, and you can have your own experiences and come back. So I think that's what has worked for us, is knowing that we're individuals and there might be some things that I want to see that he doesn't, but you know, so I think, cause you know, we've had our rows just like everyone else.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can talk. That can be another session. Spousal travel. And how it builds character when you, especially when you first start doing it together, and then all of a sudden you all kind of understand each other. One of the best things I learned about my mom and dad when they were married, they were able to speak each other's language without ever saying anything. And I was always amazed that my dad knew exactly where to stop and when to stop before anything was said. And now that's what I have with my husband, Shamari. Although I'm sure I totally get on his nerves, because I am the person who likes seeing everything and wanting to like immerse myself in the destination. So we just end up going back. I've learned that I just need to go back if we're going to do something like that. Right. Okay. Now you have 3 children. And they often help out a lot on your homestead. What's your favorite trip you've taken with them?
You know, we took one this last summer that was really cool, where we road tripped all the way to Whitefish, Montana, which is where I lived when we moved. And we went from Austin to Whitefish and back. And I know that most people are probably like 3 kids in one car, which was definitely a lot. But I learned a lot with them, and I'm also really annoying. I stop at every historical site. Like, I'm obsessed with understanding like who was here first and what was it like. And Lewis and Clark went across this way and discovered this plant, and everyone rolls their eyes at me. But yeah, I just learned a lot about myself, and I got to see the world through my kids' eyes, and to go, we tried to hit a certain marker every day, but sometimes we didn't. And
this was your first long distance road trip with them?
Yeah, like to this capacity. This was like a month.
Okay, on the road, a month on the road.
Yeah.
I think because that's our default road tripping, it's always, I'm exhausted on planes with my children. whenever we have to fly.
There's just
It's
a
because
lot.
I can't keep, even though they're very well traveled, right? That is what exhausts me. Road tripping though, like we have it down to a science. Everybody gets their backpack with
Yeah.
whatever they need in the car. We've
Yeah.
learned how to pack. We've done what is time now? 2018. In October of 2018, we did all of Route 66 forward and back. We started here in Chicago, went all the way to Santa Monica, and then came back, and that was a 3 week road trip. And they want to do it again, which is hilarious to me because I guess they still like me enough.
Well,
to be
you're
in the car.
probably traumatized by it, and they're probably like, "No, it was great." You're like, "You were terrible. You
I
were."
was no, you know what? I have to say, I think my kids, I like my kids more when we're traveling than when we're in the house because we all get stir crazy.
Yeah.
And I think we all start to get on each other's nerves if we're not moving somewhere. So we're always together because we homeschool the bottom three, but we like moving. And I think that's something that they inherited deeply from my dad's side. We were always road tripping as kids, even though
I love it.
we went the same place every summer, but we were on the road. I don't there those memories I think make a large difference. And I know that your children will have wonderful memories. And they often bring up stuff that you never ever thought that they noticed from that trip at all. And you're like, oh, I didn't think you paid attention to that.
Yeah.
And you talk about it. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
those are always the fun times.
Yeah, and it's always like the inappropriate ones, you know.
Yeah. Kids have the ability to do that. You just have to have a really strong poker face when
Yeah,
you're talking about it, because they talk about it in front of people that they shouldn't.
exactly. Like, exactly.
Yeah. You saw. Remember when we got
Nope.
too close to the edge of the mountain and we almost fell over because you didn't know how to drive? Yeah, no. we we don't know what you're talking about at all.
Yeah.
Now, did you have to encourage Jared to travel a lot, or was he already a traveler when you all met? Because I think people think that you all were already dating when you met on Supernatural, but you all first met each other there on
Yeah,
set, and that's where you all. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That was the first time, and then we would take like weekend trips together while we were dating throughout like the Vancouver area and stuff. And then when he was going, when we were dating, and like I think we had been dating for like 8 or 9 months, and he was going to Europe he'd every year would do like Rome or Barcelona and London or Birmingham and do supernatural conventions all over. And then he was going to be away for a while and asked me to join. And so, yeah, that was like our first big trip together. And I think at that time what we did was we picked certain destinations to go to. But this was like, we stupidly planned it like the week before. I specifically remember it because we were at his parents' place and driving from San Antonio to Dallas to see his brother. And we were talking about it on the way. And then like a week later, he was leaving and I was going to meet him or something. And I specifically remember talking about it. And because it's, within a week, obviously prices are really expensive. And so we were literally using miles or like going on Expedia and like waiting till things got, less, and okay, we'll stay on the train this night. It was just like a puzzle piece, and it made it fun. So I think
those are, and it obviously it made it memorable because it's a massive memory for you. Now we do have some good questions that are coming in too, and I want to make sure that we get to them. The traveling sociologist says, where have you traveled where you've been the most impressed about local level, grassroots, or government level efforts at sustainability and eco-responsible lifestyle?
That's awesome. On our honeymoon, we actually hiked Machu Picchu, and I have mixed things about Cusco. I really enjoyed it and loved it, but I wasn't as like focused on sustainability at the time. But I will say what I really loved about it was that we had someone who brought us to people's homes, to the market. So the company that we chose wasn't like a mass tourist kind of company where it was like, go to this restaurant. It's the big restaurant in town. It was like, no, this woman is going to make you cuy, which is guinea pig, that she has and she raises in her home, and she's going to cook it for you here. And so I really enjoyed that experience of seeing the locals, meeting locals, eating locally, giving back to the locals, buying from the locals, supporting locals on the trek up. I think that I can probably be better knowing what I know and making sure that I think that I would assume that we were supporting locally, and the company we used was, from looking at that experience. But now moving forward, I think that we could probably even do better. I know that there's, just really quickly, there's a great site called Local, and I think it's spelled LOKAL, that also helps with some of that legwork of finding places that
Can we put that in the comments, team? Local.
Yeah.
And then we have one more. Do you have any tips for reading past greenwashing labels? Because we know that that's an issue too. The eco-friendly, earth-friendly, are they actually sustainable, or is it just something to sell?
Yeah, so often that is a huge word, and it's a huge buzzword. It's like saying organic as if like
non-GMO. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and I think that in order to do that, you really have to like look past the label. So what does that mean? That for me, what I do is like go online and I'll look up the company and I'll go, okay, well, where is this coming from? What are the materials used in this? And so you have to go like, okay, well, what does that mean if it's recycled? And also we have to be aware of like even recycled plastics, because you wear a clothing that has recycled plastic. Well, when you wash it, most people don't know this, but the microplastics from that garment actually end up in the water system and go right back into the ocean. So there's so many different ways that a company can say they're green, but are they really green? And you have to be comfortable with what that means as well. You could also say, well, this is all 100% organic cotton, which is great, but also that uses more water. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand what your threshold is. But I think the biggest thing is just, I generally like looking for more carbon neutral. I don't know why. For me, that just seems to make me feel the best. Finding companies that are, their input and output sort of matches. And I think, but I honestly think you just have to really be mindful of, you can't just go into a store and look at the label and say that it's sustainable. You really have to like do a little bit more research before you make that purchase, which is a little bit more legwork, but in the end, will be more rewarding, I think.
Because overall, we know marketers are still targeting our emotional side rather than, always telling the truth up front, and that due diligence with researching can be the difference between actually supporting something that's truly, honestly sustainable and something that's just trendy sustainable, which is, it's extra steps and sometimes annoying, but it makes us better stewards.
But it's hard. Where we go. Marketing, it's so shiny and so
pretty. Yeah. Well, we have come to the end of our time. And I know if I have to get up early in the morning, this is the way that I would like to do it, being able to spend time talking to a good friend of mine. And you all, we listed Jen's social handles in the comment section. You can follow her both on Jen Padalecki and Town. She often hosts wonderful book clubs, and she'll pop up with a lot of interviews that always intrigue me, and I always stop whatever I'm doing to listen to them. And we want you to stay out and around for the rest of WITS, because we have some awesome programming for you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Beth. Thank you, Jen, for joining us this morning. I love you. To the moon and back. To the moon and back. And we will talk later, I'm sure.
Yes, can't wait.
Thank you both. It's been such a pleasure having you. And I hope you all enjoyed that conversation. I know I did, and learned so many really good tidbits and